Okay, hello. This is going to be just a rough draft for an idea that I would like to do a video on. I'm going to be taking notes on this, seeing how everything flows, and then maybe putting it into a more to a context that flows a little bit better. I don't exactly have a good place to film this, so that's going to be one of the challenges that we'll have to face. We're also just testing the sound quality. I have some music playing in the background, not necessarily for this, although if it makes it play better, that's when I look over it again, or anyone who I ask to review this material, that's great, but the purpose of the music is honestly just to have some background music for me, not necessarily for the video. So let's get into it. I think what I'd like to do is I want to do a server training video. There's not a whole lot of good content out there when it comes to server training. There is content, but at least as far as I've seen, not a whole lot of great content. And there's also a hole missing when it comes to training in restaurants, at least as far as I've seen, which is a decent amount, I guess. So what I'd like to do is break down serving how I see it, and it will help a lot of people, I think, who are in kind of the same thought process as me. Something helpful maybe for people who have never served before, or who have served for a long time and there's things that aren't working, etc. So I don't necessarily consider myself an A+ server. I'm not a natural at this job, but I've been doing it for a little while, and it's an interesting job, and it's a great way to make cash, not necessarily extended value currency, but cash in hand. Very good job for that. Not great for benefits, but for cash in hand in a short amount of time, it's great. So anyway, let's get into this. I think the first part that I'd like to cover is a metaphor, essentially looking at the different categories of the job, different skill sets that you'll need. And I found a good metaphor for this actually in a D&D character sheet. But anyone who's played like an RPG, even if you haven't necessarily played those games, the different categories of skills, or the attributes, should be fairly transferable. So I'll try and keep I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, so it's kind of where my mind's at right now. I'll try and keep that terminology or vernacular to a minimum. So here we go. As a server, I think the first thing to do is to recognize that there's going to be different strengths that each server brings to the table. It's a charisma-based job, and that's one of the skill sets or attributes we're going to be talking about. But I think it's a little bit overblown how big charisma plays a part. So we're going to be looking at all of the different attributes and how they fit in. So it's a charisma-based job. A lot of people, the perception, I think, is that servers are very charismatic, performer, bard type people, where my opinion is that they don't necessarily have to be. So we're going to be going over the character sheet. I think the idea is going to be to self-analyze, ask yourself, what you can do is you can ask yourself which of these traits, almost like a personality test, which of these traits fare better when compared to the rest of the traits that I have. Not necessarily compared to the average human being or anyone else, but what are the strengths that you have as a person, what are the weaknesses that you have as a person when compared to the rest of your skills. We can focus on reducing liability issues, like if you have a low charisma, which I sort of do when it comes to working with tables. You can focus on building the charisma skill up to a passable level, but in my opinion, in video games specifically, when you're working on a character, I think it's more important to build out their strengths first, because their strengths will have multiplicative effects. So we're going to be focusing on the strengths and see which sort of things you'll be able to do in a restaurant that will make you successful, instead of just worrying about how funny can I be at a table, how long can I keep a conversation going at a table. So we'll be talking about that. Then we're going to be talking about the three kind of main areas I've identified when it comes to serving. The first one is going to be your interaction skill. your charisma-based skill. And again, this is the face of everything, so this is what most people see and what most people are taught about. Your sales, your ability to talk to tables, not be annoying, but at the same time be engaging, not be dull, not be an order taker. These sorts of skills I think are very, very important, but they are a little bit, they overshadow, I think, some of the other skills that are important, especially early on. So it's also, I think, the area that I'm a little bit less strong in. So we'll be talking about that, but that is one of the skills. I'm going to call it interaction. So the next skill we're going to be talking about is, I'll be referring to it as logistics. Logistics is essentially, I think it's the bedrock skill of a server, and that is, how do you get a purchased item from A to B? If a guest orders a Sprite, how do you get that Sprite from the machine into the glass with ice out to the table, while you're managing the movement of 5 or 6 different objects at different times? And how do you make that faster? And how do you make sure that no one's left out, no packages are lost in the process, if that makes sense? So that's the logistics part of it. In my opinion, the most important first thing to teach when it comes to this job, because I think if we were going, and we'll cover the third, but if we were going to be missing any 2 of these 3 skill areas, logistics would be the most important to have. They're all important, but if you are unable to deliver everything in a timely fashion, if orders are mixed up, if the wrong food item's ordered or the wrong drink, no matter how much charisma you have, it makes it much, much harder to do this job, because that is the fundamental of this job. This is what you do. You move things, you deliver things. So logistics is going to be very important. And then the third topic is going to be politics. At least that's what I'm going to call it. You can also call it community, but I think politics is just more to the point. This one might be a bit controversial to some people. I think politics is used as a bad word. Don't talk about politics or religion, right? Well, we won't be talking about religion. Politics is very, very, very important. It's not seen or talked about unless, people like me. I think everyone knows about it, though. Every workplace has politics, etc. So what we're going to be talking about is good politics. There is such a thing as good politics. There is such a thing as bad politics. So we're going to be talking about the best way to achieve a good standing with everyone around you. If I was going to compare this to a trait in a role-playing video game, it would be something like luck. Because essentially what happens is, when you build political points within the people in your community in the restaurant, you're going to be building up luck points, and you will get advantages based off of that. The trick to it is that I think a lot of times the pitfall, there we go. The pitfall of this is that a lot of times people will expect an advantage based off of a high political acuity or a high political standing. And the truth of the matter is, the expectation cannot be there. Because it's just not a good political move to expect something like a quid pro quo thing. At least as far as I know. So the way that I approach politics is do good things, and good things come to you. And when good things come to you and they are not expected, you can trace that back to the things that you've done positive for other people around you. It's a karmic thing. But we're going to be trying to bring that in from being something vague and mysterious to being something more concrete, something more tangible that we can work with and focus on. I think it is very, very, very important. It's at least a third of the pie when it comes to serving. Running politics is a big part of every restaurant that I've been into, because there is just so much control over what happens based on how people view you. And that can be anything from schedules to how many tables you get to how you're seen as far as how strong you are. even if you're not as strong as they think you are. If they, a good example of this is if managers think that you are a better server than you actually are, you will get put into situations that will test your strength as a server and in turn make you a stronger server based on that experience. So it's a great way to fake it till you make it, essentially. I think would be a good way to put it. Very, very important stuff. Now, that being said, if a person wants to fly below the radar, a lot of the times this is just a part-time gig. It's still very important, I think, to keep your political kind of status neutral, so you don't have any of the negative side effects of sort of these sneaky disadvantages that might happen if you have a negative political outlook with your team, or if your team has a bad political outlook of you. So those are the three major categories. Character sheet, we're going to be covering that. And then I'd like to go, I think, deeply into logistics first. I think logistics are super, super important, as I've said before, but we're going to be talking about a bunch of the things that won't be taught. Using both hands, how to save essentially valuable seconds that will add up and give you more time to make more actions, to do things like score political points with your team, or just make more money because you can take more tables. That's generally the best thing to do. But if there's a cap on that, a lot of restaurants have a cap on the amount of tables you can take. There's also like physical limitations. I don't know a lot of people who can take 10 tables in a multi-course restaurant effectively, just based on the limit of hands that they have. I'm sure it's possible, but there are physical limitations there. So what do we do with this extra time? Because we're so efficient, we can start to earn political points and give ourselves a little bit more job security, a little bit more flexibility with our schedule, potentially, etc. So yeah, that's the breakdown of it. I'm going to be reviewing, I think, this and then expanding on this idea as time goes on. So thanks for watching. See ya.